Hi, I'm Jasmine, 32 years old, a single mom who never thought her own family would turn against her. Imagine this, a bright morning at our family reunion in Yellowstone. My 7-year-old daughter is happily singing a nursery rhyme. Out of nowhere, my brother snaps, slaps her across the face and sneers, like mother, like daughter, both useless. My heart stops. My mom smirks and nods in approval, while my dad stands there in silence, saying nothing. The worst part is they didn't realize a documentary microphone was recording every second of their cruelty. Autumn was just being a child, her voice sweet and innocent. That slap cut through the crowd. I froze, pulling her into my arms as her wide eyes searched mine for answers I didn't have. My mom's smug smile burned into me, as if I deserved it too. But that mic, oh, it captured everything. That night, I made a decision that turned my brother's world upside down and left him screaming. What I did wasn't just for me. It was for every child who needs protection from their own family. Before I explain how I turned the tables, leave a comment if you've ever experienced a family betrayal this deep. And if you believe kids deserve safety from toxic relatives, hit that like button and share this video to spread awareness. Stay tuned. You won't believe what happened next. Growing up in a middle-class suburb in Oregon meant learning family roles early. My father, Eric, owned a small tech consulting business and pushed innovation at home as well. My mother, Tracy, ran the household, enforcing rules with a pleasant smile that masked her favoritism. I was the one who never quite measured up, while my brother Kyle was the golden child they built everything around. From a young age, Kyle excelled in math and sports, the things my parents valued most. Eric spent hours coaching him through algebra, turning mistakes into lessons. Once, when Kyle messed up a homework problem at age 10, Eric sat beside him at the kitchen table and said gently, "That's okay, son. Let's figure it out together. You're going to run a company one day." Kyle soaked up the praise like it was owed to him. But if I questioned something small, like why we followed certain dinner rules, Eric's expression would harden. "Don't talk back to your parents," he'd snap, sending me to my room without discussion. I learned early that curiosity was a weakness in me, but a strength in Kyle. Tracy played her role by smoothing over Kyle's behavior. At family dinners, if Kyle swore while excited about a soccer game, she'd laugh and say, "Boys will be boys. Watch your language next time." No real punishment, just a gentle reminder. But if I repeated the same word, maybe something I heard at school, Tracy's eyes would narrow. "That's unacceptable. Young lady, go wash your mouth out and think about your manners." The double standard hurt, forcing me to apologize for things that weren't even my fault. She claimed it was about keeping peace, but I saw how it kept Kyle on a pedestal, making him feel untouchable while I grew smaller. Eric's ambition came from wanting Kyle to inherit his tech legacy. He talked endlessly about Kyle's sharp mind for coding and how he'd take the family business further, enrolling him in special camps while I received secondhand books. Tracy supported it all, maybe to maintain her role as the family peacemaker. By handing out affection unevenly to stay in control, their actions shaped us in opposite ways. Kyle grew confident, expecting the world to bend for him. I learned survival skills, staying quiet during conflicts, bracing for criticism, and avoiding attention that might expose my supposed flaws. By middle school, the pattern was firmly set. Kyle joined the debate team and won trophies that Eric proudly framed in the living room like museum displays. "Look what our boy accomplished," he'd boast to guests. When I tried out for the school play and landed a small role, Tracy brushed it off as a distraction. "Focus on your studies instead of pretending," she said, making my interests seem silly. At a neighborhood barbecue, Kyle roughhoused with friends and broke a neighbor's fence. Eric laughed and offered to fix it himself. But when I accidentally spilled paint during an art project, Tracy made me clean it alone, lecturing me about responsibility the entire time. These moments stacked up, reinforcing my place as the family disappointment. I learned to disappear, counting the days until I could leave. Kyle cruised through high school on scholarships and praise, his path smoothed by our parents' constant support. Eric saw him as a future CEO, pouring money into his tech projects like building computers. Tracy kept the peace by redirecting any conflict toward me, making sure Kyle never faced real consequences. As a teenager, I built emotional walls to protect myself. I'd retreat to my room after dinners where Kyle dominated the conversation, and my attempts to speak were cut short. "Not now," Eric would say, turning back to Kyle's latest success. Tracy might comfort me later, but her words felt empty. "You just need to try harder, dear." It made me strong in ways they never expected, teaching me to recognize injustice and swear I'd never repeat it with my own child one day. The suburb felt like a stage where Kyle was always the star, and I was the understudy no one bothered to notice. Eric's downtown office represented his dreams for Kyle, packed with gadgets they worked on together. Tracy's rules in the kitchen spilled into emotional ones too, where Kyle's outbursts were excused as passion, while mine were labeled drama. By 16, I had an escape plan: college far away, a place where I could finally breathe without living in their shadow. My first year of college felt like a clean slate. I met my future husband, Brandon, a quiet guy from my sociology class who actually listened instead of judging. He didn't care that I wasn't perfect, unlike my parents. At 21, I married him, driven by a desperate need to escape the suffocating rules of my childhood home. We moved into a small apartment, dreaming of a life free from constant criticism. When our daughter Autumn was born, weighing 7 pounds, I held her tiny hand and whispered a promise: "I'll never let you feel the way I did." Brandon kissed my forehead in the hospital, his voice calm. "I'll take care of both of you," he said. For a moment, I believed we would be okay. Those early years were sweet. Brandon worked as a junior accountant, and I balanced part-time jobs while raising Autumn. Her laughter filled our home, and for the first time, I felt like I was building something good. But cracks began to show when Autumn was 3. I found a text on Brandon's phone from a coworker named Leah. Flirty. Undeniable. My stomach dropped. I confronted him that night while Autumn slept in her crib. "It's nothing," he mumbled, refusing to meet my eyes. We tried counseling, but Brandon never admitted or denied anything, hiding behind vague excuses. By the time Autumn turned 4, I filed for divorce. I got full custody, but his financial support was minimal, a few $100s a month that barely covered daycare. I was alone, starting over with a toddler. Life as a single mom was exhausting. I found work as an office assistant, earning a decent but stretched salary. Rent, groceries, and surprise expenses like a broken water heater kept me awake at night. Eventually, I swallowed my pride and asked my parents for help. Eric wired money for a car repair, but couldn't resist a jab. "You picked the wrong guy, didn't you?" he said over the phone. Tracy was worse, her voice dripping with pity. "You're pretty, but naive. How will you manage alone?" I bit my tongue and nodded through their lectures, my old survival instincts kicking in. "Stay quiet. Take it. Move on." Their help always came with strings, a reminder that I would never be enough. Meanwhile, Kyle was living a completely different life. He had launched a tech startup, a project management app gaining real attention. His wife, Tanya, a sharp and stunning marketing executive, completed his picture-perfect life. At family dinners, Eric and Tracy gushed about Kyle's investor meetings or Tanya's designer clothes. "He's going places," Eric would say, pride swelling in his voice. "A real leader." I'd sit there forcing a smile as they brushed past my struggles. Once, I mentioned needing to delay a utility bill, and Tracy sighed. "Jasmine, you need to plan better." Kyle smirked silently, as if my life was a warning sign. The contrast hurt. Kyle and Tanya lived in a sleek downtown condo, hosting cocktail parties for tech insiders. I was scraping by, calling mechanics to beg for payment plans on a used sedan. Autumn's daycare consumed half my paycheck, and I skipped meals to afford her dance classes. My parents never missed a chance to compare us. At a cousin's wedding, Eric pulled me aside and asked why I couldn't step up like Kyle. "He's making the family proud," he said, as if raising Autumn alone meant nothing. Later, Tracy suggested I find a better job instead of relying on them again. Their words cut deep, echoing the scapegoat role I'd known all my life. I pushed through for Autumn, She deserved a mother who wouldn't crumble under pressure. I read her bedtime stories, tucking her in with a smile, even when I was falling apart. My parents' criticism and Kyle's success hovered over me, but I held tight to my promise to protect her. I didn't know then that our next family gathering would test that vow in ways I never imagined. That summer, my mom Tracy called out of nowhere. "We're renting cabins in Yellowstone for 2 weeks. The whole family. Hiking trails, hot springs. You and Autumn have to come." Her voice carried that familiar mix of command and expectation. I hesitated, torn between wanting some family connection for Autumn and dreading the tension with Kyle and Tracy. Then Autumn overheard and lit up. "Mom, can we go? I've never seen cousins or hot springs before." Her excitement tipped the scale. I foolishly hoped things might be different this time, that maybe they'd finally see how much I'd grown. We packed light and drove 8 hours to Wyoming, Autumn chatting nonstop about spotting bears. The cabin sat beside a rushing river, rustic wood walls and stone fireplaces, the kind of place meant for family gatherings. When we arrived, cars already crowded the gravel lot. My brother Kyle stepped out first with his wife, Tanya, both dressed like they were heading to a tech conference instead of a family trip. My parents, Eric and Tracy, waved from the porch. Then my sister Veronica arrived with her husband Austin, their kids racing ahead. And there was Leah, Kyle's girlfriend from years ago, suddenly back in the picture, laughing with Tanya like nothing had changed. The air felt heavy instantly. Eric noticed us and nodded. "Jasmine, good. You made it," he said, but his attention immediately shifted to Kyle, clapping him on the back and asking about his startup. No hug, just a brief acknowledgement before turning away. Tracy air-kissed my cheek, her eyes scanning my clothes. "You look tired." "Long drive," she said. It wasn't concern. It was her usual subtle jab. I forced a smile and guided Autumn inside to drop our bags in a small room overlooking the trees. The kids were already down by the river. Veronica and Austin's boys, 8 and 10, tossed rocks with Leah's niece, a girl about Autumn's age. Autumn skipped over eagerly. "Hi, I'm Autumn. Wanna skip stones?" The boys glanced at her, then back to their game. "We're already doing teams," the older one said, without looking up. Leah's niece whispered something, and they giggled, moving farther down the bank. Autumn stood there, rocking on her feet, her shoulders sagging. I watched from the porch, my stomach tightening. This was exactly what I feared, the same exclusion, the same hierarchy starting young, just like it had with me. Inside, Kyle dominated the kitchen, flashing his phone. "This app update just landed a 7-figure client," he bragged. Tanya nodded proudly, adding how their downtown condo might need expanding. Eric beamed. "That's my boy, building an empire." Tracy squeezed Kyle's arm, ignoring my attempt to mention Autumn's school project. Veronica and Austin listened politely, while Leah jumped in with a story about her new job, drawing laughs. I stayed quiet unpacking snacks, feeling invisible all over again. That's when I noticed Sean setting up camera equipment near the fireplace. Sean, my brother-in-law married to Tanya's sister, was filming a family documentary at Eric's request. He caught my eye and gave a small nod. I walked over and lowered my voice. "Everything's being recorded?" Sean adjusted a microphone, his expression calm but knowing. "Eric wants the full legacy captured." "Everything," he said, stressing the last word. A chill ran through me. He knew the sharp edges, the things usually said behind closed doors. This wasn't just vacation footage. It could capture whatever ugliness surfaced. I looked back at Autumn outside, still lingering alone, and wondered if coming here had been a mistake. Dinner that night confirmed it. Around the long oak table, Kyle rehashed his latest pitch while Tanya passed around gourmet cheeses. Eric grilled him on expansion plans, hanging on every word. Tracy served Kyle seconds first, then everyone else, leaving me to take what was left. Veronica mentioned her kids' soccer wins and got polite nods. When Autumn spoke up about wanting to visit the hot springs tomorrow, Tracy cut her off. "Let the adults talk, sweetie." One of the boys snickered, and Autumn shrank back. I reached under the table and squeezed her hand, my jaw tight. Later by the fire pit, work stories flowed. Leah bragged about her promotion, fitting right in with Tanya's circle. Austin joked about sales targets, earning laughs. Kyle took over again, sketching app ideas on a napkin for Eric. I sat on the edge, silent. Autumn roasted a marshmallow by herself, while the other kids clustered together. Sean filmed quietly from the shadows, his lens sweeping across the group. Every smirk, every slight, was being recorded. That night, I tucked Autumn into bed, her cheeks still pink from the cold. "Why didn't they play with me, Mom?" she whispered. I brushed her hair back. "Sometimes kids need time. You're amazing just the way you are." She nodded softly. Inside, alarms rang. This place magnified everything I'd tried to escape. And with Sean's cameras rolling, there was no hiding the truth anymore. The next morning, we gathered for breakfast at a long wooden table by the river. The air was crisp, the rush of water filling the quiet. Autumn sat beside me, humming "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star," her voice light and carefree. It drifted over clinking plates, drawing a few glances. Most people ate silently, focused on pancakes, eggs, and coffee. Kyle, sitting across from us, kept shooting looks at Autumn. His jaw tightened each time her voice rose, a familiar scowl from our childhood settling in. The tension built slowly. Autumn's humming grew louder, her small hands tapping the table in rhythm. I smiled, encouraging her happiness, but Kyle froze, his fork hovering midair. He muttered something under his breath, too low to hear. Tracy lifted an eyebrow but said nothing, sipping her coffee. Eric shoveled food in silence, eyes fixed on his plate. Tanya adjusted her scarf, avoiding everyone's gaze. Veronica and Austin exchanged quick whispers while their kids picked at fruit nearby. Sean stood off to the side, his camera lens slowly sweeping across the table, capturing everything. Then it happened. Kyle slammed his plate down, the crash slicing through Autumn's song. His face twisted, eyes blazing. "Shut up already," he barked, jumping to his feet as his chair scraped loudly against the ground. "Your singing is giving me a headache." Autumn froze, her voice cutting off mid-note. She looked at me, eyes wide with fear, clutching my hand beneath the table. I opened my mouth to calm her, but Kyle didn't pause. In one sharp motion, he leaned forward and slapped her hard across the cheek. The sound cracked through the air, sharp and sickening, echoing over the river. Autumn jolted back into her chair, tears spilling as she sobbed. Like mother, like daughter. Both useless, Kyle spat, his voice dripping with venom. I lunged forward, pulling Autumn into my arms as her small body shook against mine. Her cheek burned red, the outline of his hand unmistakable. My heart thundered, blood roaring in my ears. Tracy, seated at the end of the table, let out a faint smirk, her lips curling in quiet approval. Eric stared down at his plate, unmoving and silent, a statue of avoidance. Tanya's face went pale, her eyes darting to Kyle, but she stayed frozen, gripping her napkin. Veronica and Austin leaned toward each other, murmuring, "One more time. One more time," as if this wasn't the first eruption they'd witnessed. The kids stopped eating, staring wide-eyed. Sean didn't flinch. His camera stayed steady, recording every second of the nightmare. I held Autumn tighter, my mind blank for 10 endless seconds. I couldn't move. My eyes locked on Kyle's smug expression, then on Tracy's burning smirk. And then it hit me. Sean's camera. The microphone was on. It had been the entire time. Every word. Every sound. I glanced at Sean. He met my eyes, his mouth lifting into the faintest knowing smile. He gave a subtle nod, as if to say, "I've got it all." The weight of that moment settled over me, igniting something fierce inside. Shock came first. My 7-year-old had been struck in front of everyone for singing a song. The image of her stumbling back, her cry, seared into my mind. This wasn't just an attack on her. It was an assault on everything I had fought to protect her from. Then the anger surged, raw and unstoppable. Kyle had torn me down my entire life, but hurting Autumn crossed a line I didn't even know existed. I pressed my cheek to her hair and whispered, "You're safe, honey." Inside, a decision formed, cold and absolute. This ends today, no matter what it takes. Sean's nod stayed with me. He knew what that footage meant. Proof. Undeniable evidence of Kyle's cruelty. I looked at him again, his camera still rolling, and felt a shift. This wasn't just a family moment gone wrong. It was a chance to stop the cycle, to make Kyle face consequences for once. I didn't know how yet, but the mic, the footage, and Sean's quiet support told me I wasn't alone. Autumn's sobs faded, but my resolve hardened. This wasn't over. Hours later, with Autumn in my arms, I left the cabin. Her cheek was still swollen, the red imprint of Kyle's hand stark against her pale skin. I pressed a cold compress to it as she sat on a motel bed nearby. She hadn't spoken since it happened. Her usual chatter was gone, replaced by a heavy silence. No singing, no smiles, just a hollow stare that shattered me. I wrapped a blanket around her and, hands shaking, called my best friend Naomi, a family therapist who had always been my anchor. "He hit her, Naomi," I whispered, my voice breaking. "My brother slapped my daughter in front of everyone." Naomi's tone stayed calm but firm. "Jasmine, don't clean her face yet. Keep any marks visible. Evidence is your strongest weapon right now." I needed answers and Sean had them. We met at a quiet coffee shop a mile from the cabins. Autumn slept in the car with a motel sitter. Sean slid into the booth, his expression grim. "I didn't just film today," he said, leaning in. "I've been watching Kyle this whole trip." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Last year, he slapped Leah's 9-year-old son at a family barbecue. The boy's dad stepped in, but Eric and Tracy covered it up. Said it was a misunderstanding." My stomach dropped. Leah had told Tanya. "No one told me." "Today confirms it," Sean continued. "This is a pattern." He slid a USB drive across the table. "This has everything from the cabins, plus texts and photos from last year. Kyle isn't untouchable. What are you going to do?" "I'm with you." My thoughts raced. This wasn't just about Autumn anymore. Naomi connected me with a lawyer named Sheila who specialized in child abuse cases. We met the next day in her small office, lined with law books. Sheila listened as I described the slap, her pen moving quickly. "First, we file a police report," she said. "Officer Kyle Evans, ironic name, I know, handles these cases locally. He'll document it as child abuse, which is a criminal offense. With Sean's video, witness statements, and a medical report, prosecutors can move forward without you filing a civil suit." She leaned closer, her gaze sharp. "But you need a doctor to examine Autumn immediately." That afternoon, Dr. Courtney Singh, a pediatric psychologist, saw Autumn. She documented the bruise, her flinch at sudden noises, and her sudden withdrawal. All clear signs of trauma. Dr. Singh's report was clinical but devastating, carefully documenting both the physical bruise and the emotional damage. Back at Naomi's house, we dug deeper. I opened my laptop and pulled up TechCore, Kyle's startup. Their website proudly displayed a strict morality clause. Any employee involved in behavior that could damage the company's reputation, especially violence or harm toward minors, would be terminated. Naomi uncovered an old news article showing a former TechCore manager had been fired after a public harassment incident. The pattern was obvious. Kyle's actions could cost him everything. I stared at the USB drive, its weight suddenly heavier than ever. "If the prosecutor doesn't move fast," I told Naomi, "I'll make sure this goes public." Sheila's warning echoed in my head. "Be careful. Posting anything before the investigation could weaken the case." Still, the thought of Kyle walking free hardened my resolve. I had to protect Autumn, no matter the risk. 3 days later, I made my move. Officer Kyle Evans had filed Sheila's report and forwarded it to the county prosecutor, Linda Harper. She acted quickly, requesting Sean's footage and interviewing Veronica, Austin, and Tanya as witnesses. Dr. Singh's medical findings were submitted, painting a clear picture of abuse. Kyle was called in for questioning. At first, he denied everything, claiming Autumn had tripped. When investigators showed him the video, he stumbled, saying, "I don't recall exactly, before his lawyer shut him down. Still, the process dragged on for 2 long weeks. Kyle remained free, back in his condo, and TechCore had not been notified. The system felt painfully slow, and my anger simmered. Sitting at Naomi's kitchen table, the USB felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket. Why should I wait for justice to crawl? I asked, my voice tight. Sheila warned me again over the phone. Posting the video now could be seen as influencing the case. Kyle's lawyer would argue I was poisoning public opinion. Naomi nodded, then added, you could share it without naming him. Just show the act. Let people connect the dots. I hesitated. Sheila sighed. Public, but technically legal. Naomi leaned closer. If you want, I'll post it from a burner account. No link to you. I took a deep breath. Do it. The next day, Naomi uploaded the video to TikTok and YouTube. It showed only Kyle's hand striking Autumn, his face blurred, with audio capturing his venomous words, like mother, like daughter. Both useless. Subtitles read, a 7-year-old was slapped for singing at a Yellowstone cabin reunion. The family did nothing. This is domestic abuse. No names were mentioned, but the cabin setting, the timing, and the reference to a tech startup executive were enough. Within 48 hours, the video hit 500,000 views. TechCore employees recognized the context. Kyle's Yellowstone trip wasn't a secret. An HR whistleblower flagged it. Is our CTO abusing kids? That night, TechCore's CEO, Jeffrey Langston, called Kyle. Resign by morning or you're fired, he said, citing the morality clause. Kyle resigned, and TechCore released a statement condemning violence and confirming Kyle was no longer employed. The fallout tore through the family. Tracy called me furious. You've ruined us. Kyle was just disciplining her, she insisted, her voice shaking with denial. Eric stayed quiet at first, then muttered, you kids need to sort this out. Veronica defended Kyle online, calling it a family misunderstanding until Leah's son's incident resurfaced. Faced with Sean's old photos, she backtracked and admitted Kyle's pattern. Tanya shocked everyone by filing for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, and quietly sent money for Autumn's therapy. I should have seen it sooner, she whispered. Kyle panicked and tried to sue me for defamation, but his lawyer dropped the case once the video's authenticity became undeniable. I blocked Tracy and Eric's numbers and cut them off on social media. I was done with excuses. Autumn slowly began to heal. By fall, her voice returned, softly singing in her room, her smile reappearing during dance class. I watched her twirl, my heart finally lighter. At work, my boss noticed my focus and promoted me to office manager with a raise.